This is Legacy Battle. Make sure you hit that like, subscribe, notification button on whatever you're listening on. I'm Mike Adams, creator of Legacy Battle. My panelists tonight from the Gridiron Battle Zone, Brian King, from Steelers Nation South, Rollo Cawthon. And we want to welcome back our favorite jockey. This is his fourth go around, and he was really good in his day. 18 million career winnings. Just a fabulous jockey, Dale Cordova. Welcome back. Our special guest tonight. Obviously, our debate is going to be greatest women's jockey, hence why we have a women jockey guest here tonight. She is a retired jockey who's now a correspondent and a trainer. She's traveled the country. She's rode some of the greatest horses. She's interviewed some of the greatest riders. For years, she and her husband dominated at Canterbury Park. She has 426 top three finishes. 120 of those were first place. So we want to welcome to the show jockey Betty Jo Goodwin. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm really excited.
Yes, it's going to be a fun time. And after, as always, we'll have our Q&A for her. We'll discuss not just her racing, but some of the other things that she is doing now. And so let's start out our debate of the greatest women's jockey with Rollo.
So I have the greatest women's jockey of all time, Rosie Napravnik from Mendon, New Jersey. She got her start working with horses at a young age of 4, but her career as a jockey actually began in 2005 when she joined the jockey colony in Maryland. In 2006, in only her 6th year of racing, she finished 31st in the nation, earning just over $6 million. But she really took off as known as a really good jockey. In 2011 at the Kentucky Oaks, she rode long shot St. John's River to what was, she barely lost St. John's River with St. John's River coming even stumbling out of the blocks. That same weekend, she would ride Pants on Fire to a 9th place finish, which was the best finish by a woman up to that date. In 2012, she would finish 5th, earning just over $12.4 million, which surpassed the earnings and national placing record for a female jockey held by Julie Krone. In 2014, she became the first woman rider to win the Kentucky Oaks and 2 Breeders' Cup events, and the first to compete in all 3 jewels of the Triple Crown. She finished her career with 1,877 wins. She finished in the top 3 in 51% of her races. 51% of races, she finished top 3. She earned just over $71 million in career earnings. And in 2014, at the Breeders' Cup disc-off, she has stunned the world by announcing her retirement on national TV, telling her mom she was starting her family. But had she continued going, who knows how many wins, how much money this lady would have had she continued to ride. She is easily known as the greatest of all time when you have 51% of your wins or top 3 finishes.
Betty, she retired with 26 years old, I think it was. That at the peak, that's kind of crazy to me. But so what are your thoughts on her, and what do you think she could have done had she kept going?
So, Rosie, like Robert had said, is a sky's the limit type of rider. She started when she was young. Maryland has those pony races. And she would go out and she would ride those pony races as a young kid. And nowadays, her 2 sons, with her husband Joe Sharp, they do the same. So her kids do now participate in those same pony races. She started galloping for Dickie Smalls, who is a renowned horse trainer who passed away at 68. So sky's the limit for Rosie. She was such a strong rider. Anybody that, was riding in her time, knew when you were coming down to the wire with Rosie that it was going to be a battle. She's just well-versed. She great work ethic. You could see it, it paid off in the races that she rode and for the people that she rode for. She made a name for herself in Maryland with just her bug, which is a great place to kind of break in because you have a lot of different racetracks kind of in the vicinity of Maryland. So you can, once you kind of start getting going in that area, you can ride different places. But as far as just being a solid, strong rider down to the finish, she's amazing. I can't say anything better. She did retire at the peak of her career. So, we'll always wonder what could have been. She didn't fully step away. She still competes in eventing, 3-day eventing, show jumping. I know she has a lot to do with the horses when they come off the racetrack and they are now rehomed to go to homes, like riding homes and stuff like that. So she is still very much in the industry. She just stepped away from riding to, start a family, but definitely sky's the limit. She could have gone so far, but you know what? Being a mom, she really has gone that extra mile.
Well, let's move on to our next racer tonight, and we're gonna go with Dale.
All right. Yeah, Julie Krone. I was fortunate enough to ride races with Julie in New York and New Jersey. That girl, she's a stick of dynamite. She's really charismatic. She's high energy. That girl, I don't know how she does it. And she's like very well respected in horse racing. And I'll tell you why, because the list is very long. She grew up, her mother was in a show rider. And at 5 years old, she was competing in the 21 and under division in shows. And she has many firsts. She was the first female to win racing titles in New York, New Jersey, Florida, the first female rider to win a Triple Crown race. Not only the first, but the only on Colonial Fair, a long shot. She became the first female to be inducted into the Hall of Fame, the National Museum Racing Hall of Fame. She's in the United States Cowgirl Hall of Fame, the Michigan Hall of Fame, the Nationals Women Hall of Fame. First woman, another first to win a Breeders' Cup race. She won a Breeders' Cup race in 2003. She has over 3,700 wins, are more than Rosie, Hayley, and Michelle's combined. That's a ton of wins combined. That's why. But I mean, she's got 48 major horse wins, stake wins, handicaps under her belt. She's some of her awards, which I had to just kind of condense it. The Best Female Athlete ESPY Award, huge one. She won the Glamour Woman of the Year Award. She's on the cover of Sports Illustrated. She's got a book, an autobiography on her life. And I think she's the most decorated and successful female rider, I think, in the world. So yeah, she got the resume.
Betty, you heard the stats. What are your thoughts on Julie Krone?
So I'm going to tell you a little story about Julie. She's the reason why I wanted to be a rider. I met her when I was 6. My dad trained horses at Woodbine, and I remember this memory is so vivid. I remember coming down, my dad was like, "You're gonna meet Julie Krone." And I said, and I'm running behind him, this little girl, and he's running through, and security's, running through the tunnel, and security's like, "Stop, stop, stop." And he's like, "No, no, no, my daughter needs to meet Julie Krone." And he's dragging me. And she had just I remember the day, she had just win the Rico Woodbine Mile Stakes. It was a grade 1. She was the first ever woman to add to Dale's, first. She was the first ever woman to win $1 million race. So he dragged me through. I met her, and she took a pair of goggles off her helmet and she signed them, and she said, "Do not lose these, because like I said, I am the first woman to ever win $1 million race." Now, I did lose those goggles. Because I never took them off. I ran around as a kid saying, "I'm going to be a jockey. I'm going to be jockey." And when I told my dad that I was invited on to do this battle with you guys I told him, you know, the riders and stuff, and he automatically said, well, it's Julie Krone, Betty Jo, there's no question. Are you serious? And I said, well, you know, we have to go back and forth, Dad. And he's like, look at the riders she rode against. You know, in her day, she rode against the best jockeys in the world. In, you know what I mean? The most decorated men in this, you know, in this industry she rode against. And she did it with style and she did it with grace. And, you know, she was bubbly and energetic and just a tiny framed woman who, you know, could like I said, outride any of those guys down to the wire. And they were tough. You know, it was a tough set of riders, some of the best male riders in the country to this day. And she rode with them and she did a fantastic job. So Julie is one of the reasons why I wanted to be a jockey, and she's phenomenal.
So before we move on to our last two riders, our honorable mentions tonight, Chantel Sutherland, Holly Doyle, and my personal favorite, because she's been on the show, and we're talking, if you want to talk first, Diane Crump, the first one to ride in the Kentucky Derby. So just honorable mentions and shout outs to them. Now, as we move on to our final two, Brian and I are hoping that you guys are going to throw out your North American bias here. Okay. So this is a worldly sport. So I'm going to bring in English jockey Hayley Taylor. She rides in flat racing, and in England, that includes figure 8 tracks. So throw that loop in there. She's got 3 major race wins: the July Cup, the Nunthorpe Stakes in England, and the Beverly D Stakes here in the U.S. Congratulations to her. November 22nd, 2023, she gets her 1,000th career win. Just incredible. That includes in 2008, when she became the first woman to win 100 UK flat races in a calendar year. She retired briefly in 2016, and she was awarded it's called the Officer of the Order of the British Empire. This award is Britain's like most pristine, honorable thing. It was established by King Henry V, so it goes way back in time, and they gave that to her. At 40 years old now, she is still going pretty strong. She's Europe's first race winner, first woman's 1,000-win racer. So that is going to be, you know, with her for the rest of her life. She's a pioneer in the industry, and she is my GOAT for the women tonight. So Betty Jo, she's 40, she's still going. How old is too old? And, you know, can you tell me anything? I don't know if you've even raced on them, but those figure 8 tracks, like how are they different? Like, how's that going to affect a racer's mind?
Yeah, so she probably grew up doing that sort of thing where, you know, us, Canadians or Americans, we're used to kind of just going around in that oval. So it's something that she probably is really well versed in. And as far as how old is too old, I think that really depends on your body and your mind, you know. They always say it's not when you get hurt, it's how bad. And I know that a lot of us riders have battled back from injuries. And to me, those injuries were probably easier than the mental, you know, just kind of getting back into the groove and picking up at, you know, ground zero. Because if you're not in it and your name isn't somebody that you see every day, they kind of turn a blind eye to you. So you really are starting back at ground zero. So mentally and physically, if you think that you can still keep going, then yes. And then the other aspect is for us women in the industry is starting a family. You know, a lot of us put starting a family on the back burner, and it's something that you have to live with, whether you regret it or, you know, you have kids. It's always something that you're always thinking about. So as far as her being 40, if she believes that she is still, you know, mentally okay riding and physically she's there too, then all the power to her, because she is obviously, like the rest of the women that we are talking about tonight, well decorated and just a great overall woman rider and ambassador for us women in the industry.
Yeah, I don't know if you'll know this or not, but do you notice any difference in European riders, the way that they go compared to here in North America?
Yeah, so I think it's a different style that they develop overseas than over here. Um and I think it's just the way they're trained and how they're conditioned to where, like over here it's different. We race a lot on say dirt and all weather surfaces. They're trained, a lot of overseas is just strictly turf racing. So it comes into a different type of ride, whether you're patient, or it just depends on the horse too. So I just think they're conditioned differently overseas than we are over here.
Let's move on to our final racer tonight. Go ahead, Brian.
All right. So I got Michelle Payne. And when I think of Michelle Payne, the first word that really comes to mind is resilience. When she was 6 years old, her mother was tragically killed in a car accident. Her father was left to raise 10 children, and Michelle was the youngest. So she could have been, lost in the shuffle in that family, but instead she stood out as a child, not only proclaiming at a young age that she wanted to be a professional jockey, but she wanted to win the Melbourne Cup one day. After a few years in horse racing, she suffered a devastating fall during a race. Her wrist was broken, skull fractured, and her brain swelled. Yet she did not give up. Michelle recovered, and in 2009, she won her first Group 1 race. Then a year later, she won the 1,000 Guineas race at Caulfield. In 2015, just as she once proclaimed as a kid, she made horse racing history as she became the first female rider to ever win the Melbourne Cup in its 155-year history. Not only that, she rode Prince of Penance, a horse who only had a 100-to-1 shot to win, according to the bookmakers. In 2016, Michelle had to call on her amazing resilience again after she suffered another devastating fall, this time abdominal injuries and a torn pancreas. Yet she battled back, and she was back on the tracks a year later. In October of 2016, she was presented with the Dawn Award for the Sport Australian Hall of Fame. The Dawn Award is given to the sports person who, through their achievements and example, best inspire a nation. In 2019, Michelle's life story was depicted in a film called Ride Like a Girl, which is starring Teresa Palmer. Unfortunately, the horse racing world was saddened by her announcement to retire from the sport back in October of 2023, but her legacy of great achievement and resilience will live on.
Betty Jo, he mentioned some injuries, like how hard is it to come back from stuff like that? And he also mentioned some long shot horses that she won on. So how much of her pulling off those victories is her, and how much is just the horse having a good day?
Yeah, so I actually heard or watched the movie Ride Like a Girl before I ever knew who Michelle Payne was. And in her movie, if you've ever watched it, she struggles a lot with her weight. They talked about it in that movie. So when you're coming off an injury, like a rider like her in the movie where they, showed a lot of struggles with weight, it's hard, because you kind of get bigger because you're not able to move around as much as you could from those injuries. And mentally, they call it ballooning, getting bigger and ballooning. It's really hard to get back down to that riding weight. So her retirement doesn't come as a shock to me because she has, had some wicked hard falls and then having to come back from it. But your question being like, as far as riding long shots, I think it has to do with the rider and horse connection. It looked to me like she had been doing or in the racing industry since she was a little girl, right? And she just kind of picked and chose her horses, and she knew those personalities and they were placed right. I'm sure they were placed in the correct spot. And she kind of just took over from there. I think it's a huge factor with us women having that relationship with the horse. And I think overseas they do tend to get that more because those riders are riding those horses out a lot compared to us American riders who kind of show up, you know, and get on the horse for the first time maybe and breeze them, or just maybe show up in the jocks room and you're named on the horse. I ride a lot of 2-year-olds, and I believe that they perform better for me if I know them. And I think she knew the horses that she was riding, and that showed up in the afternoon.
Well, let's move into our vote tonight, guys. Cannot pick your own as always. Brian, you're in my upper corner. Who are you taking?
This is really tough. I mean, you guys all presented some good cases. The Rosie is just like, the what might have been story if she'd have hung on. But I mean, man, she's right there neck and neck. But I think I still got to give it to Julie though. Julie just, I mean, what an impressive resume it was that was laid out there, and yeah, just an unbelievable rider.
Yeah, I'll go next. Dale, I gotta quit letting you pick first. Because yeah, 3,700 wins. That's hard to argue. So yeah, I'm going with Julie as well. Rollo.
Well, like Betty Jo said, fathers knows best. So we gotta go with Julie Krone.
All right. Dale, you're the only one here tonight who can't pick Julie. Who would you take?
And yeah, since I can't pick Julie, Rosie. Rosie is amazing. She's her natural ability she just can just make a horse relax, do what she wants, get the most of them. Her ability is just amazing. And the what if story is, yeah, I believe she could have been right up there with Julie. So yeah, Rosie, for sure.
Betty, who I have a feeling I know who you're taking, but who are you taking?
Yeah, so I have to go with Julie. Rosie, like Dale said, is my what if. What could she have been, you know, had she kept going? But Julie just is a pioneer, you know, in our industry. And yeah, she's the reason why I am here today.
Awesome. So a win for Dale. Dale, you are still perfect on this show, 3-0. Good for you. That's an incredible win percentage there. Let's move into our Q&A. Dale, you got a first question. Go ahead.
First of all, growing up I started in the early 80s. I rode with many. I started with a lot of female jockeys, and they are so tough. They're tough. They're brave. They're hardworking, and most of the time they're more hardworking than any male, just because they have to prove themselves. I mean, it's a tough world for a woman, and especially in the early years. And I've seen them take some serious falls. I mean, hit the ground worse than you could even imagine. And life-threatening injuries that a man, sometimes don't even survive. They can't wait to get back up in the saddle. So the respect for female, I have very much respect. You answered a lot of my questions. I was going to ask who did you look up to and your favorite jockey? I guess one question would be riding with your husband. I rode with my father and my two brothers. All four of us we rode in the same races together, all four of us. And the pressure to win, because it is a competition, even more of a competition than, because you want to have the bragging rights. And is that the same with you and your husband? Because you would have some pretty good bragging rights to beat him. He's a very good jockey.
Yeah, so he's a very, very great jockey. I've learned a lot from him. I actually have this, we do like to, one up each other all the time. But I do remember we were both riding 2-year-olds their first time starters, going 7/8 on the turf. I think it was the last day at Canterbury. And I liked my horse. And he actually had gone out of town the week before the race. And I went and worked his horse for him because he was out of town. So I worked his horse. I'm like, yeah, I like your horse, but I really like my horse. And he's like, no, I think I like mine. And I said, okay. So I drew the one hole. He was on the outside. We were going down the backs, and I'm like, holy smokes, if I get a shot, I'm gonna win. Like, I've got this. And he snuck up. I was kind of boxed in, and he kind of snuck up on my outside. And I looked over. I said, no freaking way. He got the jump on me, and he actually beat me by a head. And I was disgusted. I couldn't believe it. I said, are you serious? And then I said, you owe me. I went and worked that horse for you. um, so it is quite a competition between the both of us, but he is so well respected, and I've learned a lot from him, not just in riding races, but him and I do the 2-year-old in training sales, where we end up working a lot of really nice babies, and he has taught me a lot just about working babies and just making them run for you without even looking like it. So it is definitely a competition, but he does give me some slack when I need it, and he's definitely helping me, I guess, improve every day. 2-year-olds are a tough market, and you learn every time you get on a baby, you learn something new. So, but yeah, to answer your question, we're pretty competitive.
Yes, definitely. You would have to be.
Yeah.
And that just shows because, he's not going to let you win or anybody else. And it is but the bragging rights are big.
Yes.
One more question. You rode quarter horses, thoroughbreds, both. They're both fun to ride in their ways. Do you have a favorite, or is it both adrenaline either way?
Yeah, so I want to thank my husband for that one too. I had never rode a quarter horse until I actually went to Canterbury Park, and Nick is the all-time winningest quarter horse jockey at Canterbury Park. He rides some really nice quarter horses. Canterbury runs a mixed meet where they do host a lot of nice quarter horses from all over the country. It's a great quarter horse meet. And he had said to me a few times, can you come help gallop some of these quarters? I said, oh, no, 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 no. I'm stick to my thoroughbreds. Those quarter horses are crazy. I've seen them in the gate. And he said, but Betty Jo, you're very quiet. You'll be, and you're a great gate rider. You would do really well. And I said, no, it's okay, Nick. Anyways, I ended up going out and helping him get on some quarter horses. And I was like, wow, these guys are better than the thoroughbreds. They're quieter. Like, I couldn't believe it. And I really enjoyed riding them and getting to know them. And actually, since you guys talked about it, I helped Tommy Swan.
My
Um,
favorite jockey.
She is a legend. So Tommy Swan and Pat Swan train quarter horses and thoroughbreds, and they used to come to Canterbury. They were there 3 or 4 years ago. But anyways, I hooked up with Tommy Swan and Pat Swan, and I would go over and I would help get out some of their horses. And when you talk about a woman rider, she was still ponying me 2 years ago. She still does and work hard. I've never seen a woman work harder than her. Her and her husband are a class act. And she really taught me a lot about just being a great human being. Just riding with her and riding her quarter horses. And, they would tell me all the time, oh man, they love you, Betty. You do such a great job. So that is the reason why I threw my leg over a quarter horse, because I could, and they encouraged me to do it. And coming from Tommy Swan, it really means a lot. So I can't say that I have a favorite, but I remember riding my first quarter horse race and breaking out of the gate and then looking and saying, holy smokes, it's over. That was quick. The finish line just was right there. So I can't say I have a favorite, because your adrenaline is pumping. When you get into that gate, your adrenaline is pumping either way. I think as a quarter horse rider, you have to be able to sit Chili through that adrenaline pumping because they're quick. You know, they're supposed to be on key, ready to go. I think sitting Chili in the gate on the quarter horses is really key because the break is everything. So I did learn a lot about just being a better gate rider. So I do really enjoy the quarter horses, and I never thought I would, but I do really enjoy them.
We'll go
I
Rollo.
I do. Can I just give a shout out to Tommy and Pat Swan? I grew up riding with Tommy, and she schooled me and she taught me a lot because she would sit me down and say, "No, you can't be doing that. You need to, you know." So yes, praise Pat and Tommy Swan. Yes.
Yeah, wonderful people. I
Mm.
just love them to death.
Rollo, Brian, me.
Betty Jo, the age of a horse is brings different challenges to how you ride the horse. Which age did you view most challenging, and which did you enjoy riding the most?
Yeah, so I would have to say riding 2-year-olds is the most challenging. And it takes a lot of patience, but I think everybody in our industry who wants to be a jockey should have to at least put some time in riding babies. I think it really gives you a solid base. You kind of learn. You learn with them, you learn the horse, you learn what they're saying, what they're trying to say or tell you. So 2-year-olds are very challenging, but so rewarding, because those first, it's like, if you're a dad, it's like watching your baby have those first, their first time they go to the track or the first time they breeze, or the first time they go over and run in a race. I think that 2-year-olds are so challenging to ride, but so rewarding. Older horses are set in their ways. They usually come with, a past performance where you can kind of, go back and read and they know what they're going to do. When you get on an 8-year-old gelding who's done this before, your job is to stay out of their way. Like your job is to get on, get them out of the gate clean and get a clean trip, and they'll put you where they need to be. So I think both is challenging 2-year-olds because you're teaching them, and older horses because you just need to stay out of their way. So but both obviously really rewarding. I don't ride races anymore. Like I said, I do the sales. And so the winner circle to me is, breezing a really nice horse. They go 10 flat and you come back, and the groom is so excited and they're jumping up and down and, just elated that their horse was able to accomplish going 10 flat and then maybe selling for a lot of money. So that is my winner circle now. But I think both are challenging. 2-year-olds more so than older horses. Older horses kind of just need to stay out of their way.
Oh, Betty Jo, you mentioned about your first. Well, let's talk about one of your first. You made your pro debut at Mountaineer Racetrack in West Virginia at age 21. So can you take us there? What's going through your mind when you're competing at that level for the first time?
Yeah, so it kind of seems like a blur to me. I actually, when I made my debut, I rode my first race, I think it was 3/4, and I didn't finish any well. And then the second race, I came back that night and I win. She was a gray filly. Oh, I can't remember her name, which is not great. But it's almost like a blur because you train and you work so hard to get there, and then all of a sudden you're in the moment and you're so excited yet you're so nervous, and you're just trying not to run people over, and you're trying to remember what all those journeyman jockey have taught you over the years. But it was kind of a blur to me, but I ended up winning that race, the second race I ever rode. And then the following night, I win the third race that I ever rode on an older horse who did say to me, basically, stay out of my way. I've got this. But I did end up, that older horse, I would get on him every single day. And those older horses just know what they're doing. And when he went into the gate, he was I think he was 8 years old. He went into the gate and it's like he grew 3 inches. He just went, and the guy who had me in the gate, I said, holy smokes, he's gonna win. And he looked at me and he said, why didn't you tell me? I said, I didn't know that. I didn't know that before the race. And he ended up winning. I dropped my whip, but I caught it with my leg. Like it was a mess. And he just ended up doing all of the work anyways. So that was kind of a blur those first 2 days of riding. And then after that, I win my fourth race. I think I win the first 4 out of 20 races. And I then left and went to Ocala, Florida. And I started galloping and breezing horses for Mark Casse. And then from there, I returned back home to Woodbine where I had my bug, back home. So a lot of, when you're riding and there's so much adrenaline that's going with everything and you're so excited and your stomach is in knots and it's kind of a blur to look back. I have pictures, but it really is a blur. And your phone, you get back to the jocks room and your phone is blowing up, my mom and my dad and everybody that had been waiting for me to ride. So it's kind of a blur, and I remember bits and pieces of it, but it was so exciting. It was finally like, oh my gosh, I've done it. And then once you've done it, then you're like, now what? So you just keep going.
So I've seen on YouTube that you've gotten to do some interviews with some fellow jockeys. I saw the Lindy Wade one. So is there someone that you got to interview that you were just kind of like in shock and awe, and like who was your favorite person to get to speak with?
Yeah, so Lindy, I interviewed him just a few weeks ago, but he rode at Canterbury this summer and he rode the year before. So I had the chance to get to know him really well, as long as the other riders at in the riding colony at Canterbury. So it's a lot of great riders, great talented. It's a great meet in Minnesota. If you've never been, I always say you've got to go see Canterbury. It's like the mini Saratoga. Um, but I've had the chance to maybe not interview, but meet some of my favorite jockeys. One of them being Johnny V. He probably doesn't remember because I was in shock and awe. And if I could interview him, I definitely would. He's on my bucket list. Um, but yeah, I would love to interview Johnny V. Such a class act and such a great rider. And he actually win on one of my favorite horses that I was able to ride, Arabian Lion. So I breezed him at the 2-year-old in training sale, and Bob Baffert and Zidane purchased him for 600,000. He is a son of Justify, and Johnny V actually rode him, and I would love to talk to him about riding him in a race because I breezed him as a 2-year-old, before he was Arabian Lion, and we always thought he was really nice. But I would love to interview Johnny V. But I have been interviewing a lot of great horsemen in the industry, from just trainers and owners and jockeys. Another person that I loved interviewing is Extreme Racing. They're mainly based in Minnesota as well. They have horses running at Oaklawn, and then Delaware Park, but they're great for the industry. They're great people. You'll probably see them kind of on a bigger stage. They won a race at Keeneland this summer or this fall. So I think they're going to be kind of right there in the upcoming in the upcoming years to come. So I've had the ability to interview some great people, and I'm excited to see where that'll take me. And I can't wait to interview some more.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Betty Jo, so much for joining us here tonight. We appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was great.
Reminder, everybody, hit that like, subscribe, notification button. And thank you to Dale for joining us as well. We'll see y'all next time. Everyone have a fantastic night.